turned 6 o'clock, so I will start the meeting. Welcome to East Gippsland Shire Council's meeting today, 26th of the 9th, 23. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public. During this meeting, any members of the public who are addressing Council will have their image and comments recorded. No other person has the right to record Council meetings unless approval is granted by the Chair, and I am the Chair tonight. In line with the Local Government Act 2020, councillors are able to attend council meetings electronically or in person, and the meeting will be open to the public via live streaming. Members of the public are invited to view the live stream council meetings by following the link on the council's website or Facebook page. If we encounter technical difficulties tonight while live streaming during the meeting, we'll adjourn until the issue is resolved, and if technical issues can't be resolved, the meeting may be postponed to a later time or date. East Gippsland Shire Council acknowledges the Gunai, Kurnai, Monero and Bidawal people as the traditional custodians of this land that encompasses East Gippsland Shire, and their enduring relationship with country. The traditional custodians have cared and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years. Council value their living culture and practices and their right to self-determination. Council pays respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in East Gippsland, their elders past, present and future. Ladies and gentlemen and councillors who are here tonight, a member's attendance can only be recorded as present at a council meeting when the member can confirm all of these criteria, and I'm referring to our three councillors who are attending remotely tonight, so that they can hear proceedings, they can see each other, can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members and can be heard to speak. So now I will confirm with each councillor in turn that they can see, hear and be heard by each other, and to note assurance from each that their location they're participating from is secure, to ensure confidential deliberations remain confidential. Good evening, Councillor Van Diggle. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
Terrific. And can you confirm the location you're participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, it is, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Councillor Buckley, good evening. Can you see and hear us?
Indeed I can.
Great. Can you confirm that the location you're participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Indeed it is.
Great, thank you. Councillor White, good evening. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can.
Good, thank you. Can you confirm that the location you're participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, I certainly can say it is secure.
Thank you, councillors. And for the benefit of everyone, if a councillor participating electronically experiences technical difficulties during the meeting, we may adjourn briefly to enable the councillor to rejoin the meeting. And should the councillor be unable to reconnect within 5 minutes, the meeting shall resume in the councillor's absence. When we get to the open forum, I'll give some guidance to those people who wish to speak tonight. So, councillors and those who are gathered here, I don't think we have any apologies. Councillor Stowe, you were an apology, but you've miraculously appeared, so that's great. Item 1.3 is declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations, councillors and officers? Councillor White, you are muted, and I know you have given me pre-warning of your wish to make a declaration. There you are.
Sorry, I've got IT on the phone trying to sort out some issues for me, so I can't listen to two voices at the same time.
Oh, okay. Councillor White, I think that you've identified item 5.2.4. Is that correct, that you had a declaration at?
I believe that's the number, but I've got no paperwork open here at the moment, so
yeah, I think that's the case, so I'm just checking with governance, and that is the case. So if you're happy for me to assume that that's what it is, and when we get to that point, we'll guide you in slipping away for that time.
Good, thank you.
Good, thanks, Councillor White.
Through you, Mayor.
Yes, CEO.
I would just also like to declare a conflict of interest in items 7.2 and 7.3.
Thank you.
Listed in the closed agenda.
Yep, noted. Councillors and officers, any other declarations? Ms Elling, thank you.
Yes, I'll declare a conflict of interest for items 7.2 and 7.3 in the closed agenda, but will remain
noted. Thank you. They are all noted there.
My colleague and I are just conferring, and we probably need to declare a conflict of interest as well for that same items.
Okay.
Thank
7.2, 7.3. Okay, thank you. Okay, all done. Thank you, councillors. Confirmation of minutes. So item 1.4, councillors, is the minutes of the council meeting held on 5th September be confirmed. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Allen, a seconder. Councillor Uri. Councillor Allen, did you want to speak to the matter? No. Councillor Uri. Is the matter opposed, councillors? Does anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Those who are here, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried. Thank you. And I have abstained as I was absent. Item 1.5, councillors and people who are with us. The next council meeting is going to be here on Tuesday, 17th of October 2023. And we are at 273 Main Street, Bairnsdale. Item 1.6, just moving through these procedural matters for those who are watching and listening. Request for leave of absence. I haven't seen or heard of any.
None received.
Thank you. Item 1.7, CEO, is open forum, and we do have some folk who wish to speak. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I will just remind those who are speaking that people addressing council are reminded to extend due courtesy in respect to council, its staff and the processes under which we operate, and to take direction from the chair when it's called upon to do so. There won't be discussion or debate with the attendee for the public questions or submissions, but councillors may ask questions of clarification. So as chair, I reserve the right to cease questions or submissions if at any point they are deemed inappropriate or inconsistent with councillors' governance rules or mutual respect charter, and that mutual respect charter is just outside the chamber here. So that's just for the benefit of everyone. CEO, we don't have any petitions. Do we have any questions of council?
Yes, we do, Mayor.
Terrific. Who have we got?
Mr John Butler-Cole, who I believe is here. No, yes.
Did Mr Butler-Cole want you
I was advised
to...
that he was going to be here in person.
Okay.
What we can do, I don't have authority to read them out on his behalf.
Okay.
So what we can do is answer those and put them into the minutes.
Okay. Good. We'll do that. Thank you. Public submissions. Do we have any public submissions, CEO?
Yes, we do. We have
Great.
3 people who wish to speak to council tonight. The first person being Julie Dittrich.
Hello, Julie. Hello. Good to see you. Would you like to come up and join us?
I can, thank you.
You're going to talk to us about libraries, are you?
What would you think?
I wouldn't expect anything less.
A glass of water?
Please do.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr Butler-Cole looks like he's just here.
That's better. Good evening, everybody.
5 minutes. 5 minutes, Julie.
6?
5. It's 5 minutes. Councillors don't even get to negotiate on speaking time.
Okay. I'm going to start with a statement, and the question at the end is one for your reflection. So, starting gun, ready, set, go. I stood before you almost 10 months ago advocating for our libraries to not suffer a 45-hour-a-week reduction to fill positions in the online call centres created by Council. 6 of you voted in that meeting to support a 12-month postponement of the closures to gather what Tom described as more and better statistics, and this began soon after. And you, Arthur, asked us to make use of this time and not make fools of us. I think we have made good use of this time, trying to engage all ages and abilities to make use of the library. And we know more people are using the library. Here are some of the things we have done. We have had made a large flag for the outside of the library, as over 80% of those who signed our petition had little idea that the service centre was the library with Shire business conducted there. It is a point of general amusement that bingo gets better signage than a Shire facility. purchased additional furniture for the communal space in addition to the sofa and beanbags purchased for the children's area 2 years ago, including comfortable upholstered individual chairs. 3, purchased a Nintendo and Switch with additional games for young adults and a TV monitor. 4, instigated a monthly prize for book reviews by young readers and young adults. Our library continues to be an oasis of calm and such a positive place to connect with community. And to have free Wi-Fi, audiobooks and online resources of all kinds is truly a wonderful service for us all. Using the analogy of a runner, we have had the time to run a marathon rather than a sprint. But what was the terrain? We asked patiently and respectfully of the Council many times for a baseline on numbers coming into the library and how they used their time whilst in it. To this day, despite a submission to the Ombudsman in August and a Freedom of Information request, we don't have any idea if our efforts have made any appreciable difference. We have worked hard for you as volunteers over these last months, and I'd like to throw a challenge out to you to match or exceed our efforts. Here's a few recommendations. If the Shire were to identify all 20 Shire managers without a title and job description, no one would know what each person's function was. And service centres are just the same. Can we please have a functional name change so that the library, which forms over 70% of business conducted there, is identified and made known? An example, the Library and Shire Service Centre. After all, you identify our popular services on your website as libraries, plural, and so it goes through all of your pages. 2, better signage in every town so that the service centres are clearly identified as having other uses. Here's one. Contrary to your own policy, East Gippsland Shire does have sufficient infrastructure to provide and host cool zones or hot day out centres. It could be, as it was in December 2019, a matter of extreme importance to the elderly and families especially. Climate change is very topical. So is the inherent threat of bigger and more dangerous fires around here. Your heatwave plan hasn't been updated since 2014, yet it could be part of a new no-cost initiative where East Gippsland Shire led the way, and with a small part of the $1.2 million grant from the federal government's National Emergency Management Agency, you could do a lot. This is me being a bit schmaltzy. Libraries are cool, especially on hot days. 4, involve your Every Friends group in your decision making if what you plan will have an impact on local communities. Talking to us is not the same as talking with us. As an instance, you have volunteers at your tourist information centres. They are inducted, trained with a clear list of duties that can be performed, supported, and they are offered more advanced opportunities to interact with the public. Why couldn't we do the same?
I'm going to have to interrupt you and ask you to get to your final point.
Yes.
Because your suggestions are great.
My 6 lines are coming.
One line. Because
Okay.
every line that you take, I have is somebody else's line that they can't speak.
Councillors, we have exhausted all other channels to find out what objectives we need to maintain our current hours before the November deadline. Our race is almost run, but again, we have no idea of the finish line. Have we moved past it? Is anything we have done going to make any difference to your decision? And I do thank you for the extra 30
thank you for your
seconds.
contribution, and thank you.
Thank
Councillors,
you.
any questions of Julie? No? Julie, thanks. I think that all that data and information is yet to come to us, and you'll be part of that sharing once we get it. So
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your...
Everybody.
I just have a quick question, Mayor. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Julie, stand by.
Sorry,
Councillor Van
Julie, I
Diggle.
just wanted...
Yep.
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to ask, are you saying that there's interest, I guess, from the Friends of Paynesville Library or Lakes Entrance, that there's more formal volunteer opportunities?
Yes, I don't know much about the tourist information centres, but from what I understand, volunteers are employed there. They're trained, inducted, they're offered more and specific tasks. And if the Friends could help in any way, in the same way as the tourist information centres are, we could perhaps take the heat off the libraries in their busiest times and allow the people there to attend to their calls. It's just a thought, but
Okay.
we've been told that we can't take the job of anybody in the library, and I just think that's wrong.
And there is a difference in some of the visitor information centres that have employed staff and volunteers at different places. So,
Yep.
so
Something
there
to
I'd be
is-
very
think about,
curious to have a
Mayor.
conversation, though.
Yeah. Good. Thanks for the clarification there, Councillor Van Diggle.
Thanks, Julie.
Are we done?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Thanks.
Who do we have next, CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. Neil Barraclough, who I believe is here in person.
Neil, I've seen here. G'day, Neil. Welcome. Good to see you again. Come on in.
Press the button. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to
Take it away.
speak. I've come along tonight to comment on the article on last month's meeting supporting a world-class industry in relation to the timber industry, and it is a bit confusing in that it's the timber industry paper that the East Gippsland Shire developed, I think, is brilliant. And as somebody that's followed forest issues for nearly 50 years, 50 years, it is the light at the end of the tunnel for me and a lot of others. But it just gets a bit confused here, where it's suggested that the present timber industry that's being closed down is somehow world class. Now, I have taken a very great interest in the timber industry, and I'll just go back to the start. My father was a mountain cattleman, ran cattle up in the mountains around Mount Skene, and my first trip into the mountains, I think, was 1959, when a cow had got its head in a 4-gallon tin, and the loggers there had told Dad, and we went up there. And I can remember driving along this road. Dad said to me, "You look in that side of the road and I'll look in this side of the road," looking for it. And you could see back, I can remember seeing back maybe 50, 100 metres through the trees. Now, you go into those areas today and you can't walk through there. Now, what's the major difference with that? Well, the main one is probably about 100 times the intensity of a fire that goes through there, just to pluck a figure out of the air. The history of it is that those areas, the mountains through from right along throughout Gippsland and the northeast, they were worked by the mountain cattlemen who regularly burnt it every autumn when they were mustering their cattle, and many areas continued up to the 1939 fires. Now, when the 1939 fires went through, it absolutely devastated the timber resource where the cattlemen had been stopped burning, and left the areas, particularly the alpine ash, where the cattlemen had been still managing it up to 39, it left them virtually untouched. And when they finished the harvesting of the fire-killed ash in the Central Highlands back towards Melbourne, they then moved into these areas and were like logging alpine ash going back to the 1851 fire. The cattlemen had saved it, and the science of the day said that their fires were damaging the timber resource when they were protecting it. So they stopped the cattlemen's burning after the 39 fire, largely, and then we had a period from the late 40s through to the mid-90s, which was said to be the highest solar activity for 8,000 years. Now, rainfall has a close relationship to solar activity in southeast Australia, so we quite likely had an 8,000-year high in rainfall, and 1996 the solar activity dropped off, the rainfalls dropped off, and we have had mega fires going through regularly since. And because of the fire exclusion, which was brought in by the timber industry and not our green friends, we have seen the alpine ash absolutely devastated. And in the email I sent to the councillors, I drew a simile with the passenger pigeon. And like the passenger pigeon was a massive population of birds and they were just decimated. And we've seen the same with the alpine ash. It's 1 or 2 mega fires off extinction. And in the email I sent to you, there was a clipping from the 5th of the September saying basically exactly that the seed resource isn't there to replant from the present fires, and there are large areas of, like alpine ash, too young to set seed. If a fire goes through there, they will be eliminated from the landscape. And what is Vic Forest doing? We have a couple of areas of old growth left. One is in the Little Dargo, which I'm very familiar with, and one is at Mount Wills, and Vic Forest is wanting to log these last old growth forests, and that is a total parallel to the extinction of the passenger pigeon. Yes, we have to embrace that brilliant policy you've got, but don't do it without an understanding of how we've trashed the forests in the past.
Neil, thanks. Councillors, Neil speaks very eloquently and with great passion and experience. Yes, Councillor Buckley, question of Neil.
Perhaps just a question, well, a statement, but maybe a question. So
Turn it into a question. Go on.
Yeah, Neil, what would you recommend? I mean, we were promised a seed facility, which never eventuated, and I don't know where that landed, but we were supposed to get a seed processing plant for now or then into the Bensdale area, and perhaps Councillor Crook could answer that question. But what do we do to ensure
you're asking
that we...
Neil the question, not Councillor Crook?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if he knows, but what do we do about reseeding? How do we fix that problem?
Well, if the trees aren't there, first thing we've got to do is protect the old growth and protect the remaining stands as best we can.
As seed stock.
Just don't lose what's there, or you have no seed stock.
Yeah.
Like, we've got to protect the Little Dargo, and when I say protect it, it is an absolute necessity that we return the traditional mountain cattlemen's regular low-intensity burns, or it will just go the same way it has everywhere else where they've been stopped. The rest, like there's mountain ash, alpine ash, regrowth right across the mountains, or in many areas. The first thing is, if you have a look at the Little Dargo, you can see there's maybe 50, 60 trees per hectare at a guess. And if you look at the regrowth after logging and after clear felling and after fire, you could be looking at 1,000 stems per hectare, 600 to 1,000. And those regrowth stands from fire and clear felling are just getting decimated in the mega fires. It is that simply has to have 80 of the stems removed to return it to its former structure to save it.
Right.
All right. Okay, thanks. Thanks for the question, Sonia. Thanks, Neil. It's a challenging space and it's a difficult space for us to get traction on, as it's not our policy area, unfortunately. So we have a third speaker, CEO?
Yes, we do. Thanks, Mayor. And through you, Cosette Murphy, who is here.
Okay. You know your way around the microphone there, Cosette.
Oh,
You've done it
yeah.
often enough.
It's my friend. I'm going to read a letter from Lynn Wintergreen, which is a friend of the library in Orbost. She was here last year, if you remember. I don't know if you remember. She was here last year. She couldn't come with us today.
Okay.
It's approximately a year since Mayor Reeves, in the face of an energetically expressed ratepayers' concern, offered to review the library hours proposal. The reasonable response of ratepayers was to inquire about the terms of that review, who will conduct it, what its focus will be, and how we could contribute to it. As yet, we have no answer to that. Further inquiries have been made. We presume a decision is imminent. We need to know about the basis of any decisions. We still don't even have a good understanding of the basis of the original decisions. Councillors are required to provide reasonable transparency for their decisions, and that transparency has been lacking in the matter of reduced library hours. A year ago, it was made clear to councils that communities were dealing with the long trauma load of drought, fires, and pandemic. What we needed most was continuity of existing valuable services. We now also have the closure of the timber industry and the widespread crisis in housing and cost of living. Libraries are, as ever, the trusted sanctuary in hard times. They are the one council services beyond roads and bins that we all cherish. We are concerned that council's evaluation seems likely based on the recent statements, not even address the social amethyst so valued across the Shire. We require a clarification of the above as soon as possible. Thank you. That was it.
That was it?
Nice and
okay.
sweet.
So Cosette and Julie, just to remind you and anybody else that's listening, so we haven't had a report, no decision has been made, we're still getting the information, and that will be a public process. So there'll be a report, there'll be a decision made, and it'll be a resolution of council as to what happens. And I think there's other things that the residents of East Gippsland love. Boat ramps, jetties, rivers, as well as libraries. Libraries are one of them, but there's many, many things. Aquadomes, barks, and they're all of those high-value assets that we all love. And it's a real balancing act. But be reassured that no decision's been made.
Thank you.
But thank you for being here as always. Are there any questions, councillors? Now, I think that John Butler-Cole has arrived late.
No, that's a different person.
Is that right? Is John here? No? No, not here. So if John had arrived, I would have given him the benefit of having another go in that question of council. But as the CEO has said, we'll deal with that through the minutes. Thanks, councillors. Let's move on. I'll just reload my agenda there. So we're on to item 1.8, which is items to be tabled, and I don't believe there are any. I don't believe there's any notices of motion. I don't think there's any deferred business. So, councillors, it is your opportunity now for councillor and delegate reports. So, an opportunity to share what you've been doing and where you've been in the community and the difference you've made. Councillor Allen, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Mark.
Great.
I'll start off. The past few weeks for me have actually been fairly busy.
Don't know why.
I don't know why either, but I've provided a more in-depth outline of what I've been up to in my written report. But in summary, I attended the Bairnsdale Men's Shed 30th anniversary event along with Councillor Urey and the CEO, and we had a nice time down there in the sunshine with their loyal band of followers. And then the very next day, with Councillor Van Diggle, I attended the Specialist School Open Day, and I've just got to take my hat off to the dedication of the staff at that school. They are absolutely exceptional. And also thank you, Dan Clark, for his hospitality on the day. With the Mayor on leave, I had what I thought was a pretty big honour in that I got to open the Lindenow Gymnastics Centre. You need to go and have a look at the facility. It is absolutely first class. But the thing that stood out to me is that there's over 600 participants weekly in that facility. And you work out the population of children in that age group in Bairnsdale, there's not many that aren't there. So it's a fantastic facility. I also attended the Orbost stakeholders meeting along with the CEO and council officers. And the thing that amazed me out of that meeting was, despite all the challenges that are confronting Orbost at the present time, it's not glass half empty, it's glass half full, and the community determined that they've got a future, and it's a very, very bright future. And again, a thank you to Mark, because I think it's probably a highlight of my time on council. I got to conduct the citizenship ceremony on September the 17th at St Mary's Parish Centre, which September the 17th is Citizenship Day in Australia, and there was 9 candidates who become Australian citizens. I think there was about 60 people in attendance, so that shows the value that those people put on citizenship, and it was a really, really nice day. Tuesday the 19th was a red letter day, because I was able to hand that seat there back to you. So welcome back, Mark.
Still warm and functional.
That's right. And the final thing that I want to mention is we had a Marina Committee meeting here last week, and I really want to acknowledge the great leadership displayed by Fiona and Chris, Angela and Belinda at that meeting, and I just need to put on record how lucky we are to have staff of that calibre. I think that was exceptional.
Councillor Allen. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I've been away on holidays to Western Australia for 3 weeks, so I don't have a lot to report. I'd just like to say one thing, though. I'd like to, on behalf of all of us, wish those very brave boys of the Collingwood Football Club all the best on Saturday, and we hope, sincerely hope that the umpires give us a fair crack at it for a change.
Point of order. He's been away and he's delirious. Sorry, those who are watching. Councillor Crook.
Our official football
strike that from the record, please, if you would.
There. Thank you, Mayor. I had the pleasure of attending the Cities Power Partnership Climate Summit for Local Government a couple of weeks ago in Melbourne. The summit really delved into some pretty large topics. Particularly interesting, I found presentations on local leadership in the climate discourse, Australia's transition to renewable energy, the multi-tiered governmental collaboration approaches that are being taken, where all tiers of government are working together, how we're addressing the need for clean transport. But particularly interesting, and I thought especially relevant to our region, was a discussion around energy democracy. A major theme of the conference was the lack of equity of access to the benefits of renewable energy, whereby people who can't afford solar panels often miss out on the benefits. A solution to this was presented via the creation of what they call virtual power plants, which allow non-solar houses to sign up to a community plan and get power from others in the community, even at night, whereby the electricity comes from lots of domestic house batteries connected together across a street or even across an entire suburb. It's all controlled by some clever computer programs which monitor the supply and demand, storing excess power generated during the day and sending it back out to the participants at night. something I'm especially keen to explore for East Gippsland into the future, and because I believe this technology has a capacity to build much greater energy resilience, especially for some of our more remote communities that exist at the end of transmission lines and experience what can only be described as an intermittent supply. I also had the great pleasure of attending the Bairnsdale Neighbourhood House Annual General Meeting last week. Really pleased to report that it was a great event. I was quite taken aback at the level of enthusiasm from the committee. Gathering provided a really valuable opportunity to learn about the exceptional services and remarkable contributions that the Bairnsdale Neighbourhood House provides to our community. I didn't know, but the Bairnsdale Neighbourhood House has consistently demonstrated its commitment to our community and really offers exceptional value. Despite receiving pretty limited funding of only about $260,000 over the past year, the organisation has delivered an astounding $5.6 million in value to the community. It's a remarkable achievement that speaks volumes about their dedication to serving the needs of our residents. And I'll say that a significant proportion of the Neighbourhood House's success can be attributed to the dedication of its volunteers. Their unwavering commitment to community service and their willingness to contribute their time and skills are truly commendable. Volunteers continue to be the backbone of many community organisations, and it is evident that the Neighbourhood House is no exception. I'll write a delegate's report that I'll submit to the minutes. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Crook, and their food bank is amazing.
Indeed, the range of services they offer is astounding.
Yep.
They do great work.
Well done.
Good on them.
Glad you were there. Thanks for that, Councillor Crook. Councillor Van Diggle, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Sure. I've had a busy few weeks as well. The previous 3 weeks were relatively quiet, so it's felt like it's been full steam ahead. I have submitted my report with the minutes in more detail, but I think Councillor Allen was talking about something he did on, I don't know the date anymore, and then the specialist school the next day, but he also joined me in Sale that evening for the Future Proof dinner. So I can imagine Councillor Allen has been very busy. So yeah, I went to the Future Proof dinner in Sale, the East Gippsland Specialist School pyjama party. I also went with Councillor Crook to the IQ Club mental health session at Club Eastwood, I think it's called now, and that was sponsored by Gippsland, Jersey, BJ Bearings and the Bairnsdale Neighbourhood House. And it was, I can't say that all of the topics were extremely relevant to us, but I think it created some great conversations that I think we need to continue having. I attended the citizenship ceremony as well. I always love that because I say it every time, but I remember when that happened for me in 2002, I think. An Are You OK Day event in Orbost. I also went to the planning consultation meeting for Brookfield Lakes, and I also attended the National Coming Out Day meeting with the Victorian Pride Lobby. I do want to have conversations about some of these things with council internally, but there's more details submitted with the minutes.
Thanks, Councillor Van Diggle. Appreciate it. Councillor Buckley.
Like everyone around the table, I've been flat out busy, which is great. I'll start off with working backwards. I sang at the opening of the Omeo Hub Community Centre, which was there was an intimate crowd, and it was attended by Stuart as well, one of our officers who travelled all the way to celebrate with us, which was appreciated. And it was a really great day, and I think that the Omeo Hub Community Centre is going to provide a wonderful space for all of the residents of Omeo and the surrounding districts. So I fully support it, and they're a great initiative which segues into the Rejuvenate program that I attended in Beechworth. Which is supported by council through ACRE, and it's bringing community-led initiatives to life. And the Omeo Hub was one of those initiatives, as well as East Gippsland Timber Milling Project, Benambra Futures. There was also from here, East Gippsland Winterfest was part of that initiative, which was terrific, and Sustainable Brumby Management was another one. So fantastic group of people at a really well-attended event, and I could talk for hours on it. I was so impressed with how that process works and fully support it. Moving on to Rural Councils Victoria, we met with MAV, and some really important subjects were discussed in regards to what affects our region. We discussed the importance of redirecting 25% of the revenue from short-term house stays from the Airbnb sector back to rural areas, which has been a state government announcement recently, and Rural Councils Victoria emphasises the need for this revenue not to go into consolidated revenue, but directly benefit the communities where they're generated, which I fully support. There was also an acknowledgement of Melbourne's rapid growth, and which is leading to increased regional growth plans. And local councils must have a greater say to ensure state support for infrastructure to align with those immigration patterns. There was talk about MAV actively seeking cost-shifting information, that there was a poll held to determine which level of government should handle certain responsibilities and take the pressure off some of the local councils. There was also a survey conducted about the code of conduct, which will be sent through the inspectorate, that was discussed, and the importance of ensuring that we have, or a suggestion that there may be a regional monitor to ensure compliance was a suggestion that was put forward. And I look. There was the last, I'll finish on this because I know that there's a lot more to get through tonight. Removal of police stations were noted as having an impact on small councils, and it was suggested that councils actively advocate on this issue. Concerns were raised about staff being taken away and the need for the Police Association involvement. I'll submit my report, Mayor.
Good, thank you. They're important matters. I wasn't aware of that, so thanks. Councillor White.
Only one item to discuss. It's been recently a phone call, and we know that there's some propositions for solar farms arriving on our doorstep, but also we could be on the cusp of commercial wind farms as well. So just to say that perhaps our region's being eyed off for renewable energy production. Thank you.
Good. Create some opportunities and challenges, I'm sure. Thanks, Councillor White. Councillor Greason, did you want to share anything?
No, I've been away on leave. Thank you.
Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to submit my written report for inclusion in the minutes, but just wanted to mention a couple of things. On the 20th of September, along with Councillor Crook, I attended a Changemakers breakfast conversation. This was the second in a series of conversations. There are many exciting and new emergent projects in East Gippsland which I think are expressing a different set of values and a new way of working which builds and benefits the community, respects nature, is generous and inclusive, and is often arts-focused. It was wonderful to be engaged in a well-facilitated conversation amongst 20 or so of these people who are happy and curious to find connections between the various projects, and which will see the movement grow. I very much look forward to the next meeting and the next conversation. I can't tell if I enjoyed the conversation itself or the outcomes more. It's possible that both of these things are inseparable. Exciting things happening. And just to briefly mention, as one of the councillor representatives on the Audit and Risk Committee, I attended a special meeting as well as a joint meeting of the whole with the whole councillor group invited today, and this was to finalise the annual performance report of the committee, as well as to consider the annual financial statements, which will need to be endorsed by council this evening before being included in the council's annual report. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Uri, thank you for that. Councillors, just want to acknowledge all the work that you do and how valuable it is and appreciated by the community. Just wanted to also acknowledge and thank you for granting me leave. So I've had an amazing time being away. But in my absence, Councillor Allen, as Deputy Mayor, just wanted to acknowledge the work you do. Now that the representation that you've shared, just only tonight, but there's been a lot of representation that you've done in the community, and you are a loved and respected Deputy Mayor and Acting Mayor in my absence. No backflips at the gymnastics centre, unfortunately, that was good, but also in chairing the meetings and chairing the briefings. So, and I know the other councillors value your work in that. So a public call out and acknowledgement of your work. So thank you very much. That's
Hear,
nice.
hear.
Thank you.
And that's my report. Councillors, let's move on to item 5.1, which is Business Excellence section 5.1.1, which is the draft annual financial statements. And to the members of the gallery in the front row who are just all leaving, is it something I said or... Thanks for being here. We always appreciate having an audience and a gallery. Thank you. Travel well home. Look out for those animals. Yes, here we go. So, Ms Elling, it's your area.
Indeed.
Take us away, please. And you
Thank
have
you,
a cast
Mayor.
of your officers here too.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Councillors, before you is a report seeking Council's in-principle approval of the draft 2022-23 annual financial statements and performance statement. The report also seeks Council's appointment of the two councillors to sign the 2022-23 annual financial statements and financial statement in their final form. Salient points from the report are that councils are required to produce an annual report within 4 months of the end of the financial year. Mm-hmm. The annual report includes the audited financial statements and performance statement. Given the timing of the audit process, provisions exist within the Local Government Act 2020 for councils to adopt the financial statements and performance statement in principle before submission to the Auditor-General. Council must appoint two councillors to certify the financial statements and the performance statement in their final form once the Auditor-General has advised that this can be done. Once the financial statements and the performance statement have been certified in the required manner, they are provided to the Auditor-General so the audit report can be issued. The draft financial statements and the draft performance statements were presented to the Audit and Risk Committee at a meeting held earlier today, and that committee recommended the Council adopt the financial statements and performance statement in accordance with the recommendation that's contained in the report for you here this evening. Here tonight with me is Manager Finance Liz Collins, who is available to respond to any questions of a technical nature. The report is presented for your consideration, councillors. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ms Elling. Thank you, councillors. So are there any questions of the report of Ms Elling or of the financial statements of Ms Collins? Ms Collins, who's here. Councillors. Yes, Councillor Buckley, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Liz. Can you provide an overview of the financial statements highlighting any area of concern or need for improvement? Just so that we can understand that everything, you know, from our meeting earlier today, I was assured that everything is in order.
It's a big question, Councillor Buckley, so to do that in 1 or 2 breaths is going to be hard, but Ms Collins is...
Give it a shot, Liz.
Yes, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Buckley, for the question. And I guess from the meeting today with the Audit Committee and the councillors and the auditors, what you would have gleaned from that is that with the information provided, that the draft financial statements and performance statement fairly represent the financial transactions for the previous financial year. Now, those reports are presented in a format that's required by legislation in terms of the model finance report and the performance statement. The auditors, as you will know, raise no concerns in terms of council's financial viability at the end of the year, nor going forward. And I guess that's the assurance that the councillors appointed to certify the financial statements, that's what they're saying, that they believe that they're presented fairly in terms of the transactions and the position of council 1 for the 22-23 year and as at the 30th of June 2023. I guess there's information within the reports that explains a whole range of information, and that may be subject to a further report to Council in terms of, following this process, which is the legislative process as part of the audit requirement under the Act. Hope I've answered that as much as I can in that short time.
So everything's compliant and as required.
Yes, and as you know, there were no material matters raised by the auditors in terms of the review of the draft financial statements or performance statement.
Great, thank you. Reassuring. Councillor, is there any further questions of our officers on this report? Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mayor. There's so much information in here. It's
very dense.
It is. But there's also a lot of interesting information as well, and I think, could be the subject of further discussions. I wondered, so I was interested in the fact that the audit process did come up with a number of things which they suggested could be changed, but the emphasis on that they were non-material changes. They weren't major changes that needed to be made. Could I just ask, have those changes already been made, the ones that were suggested?
Through discussion with the auditors, I think there's 3 unadjusted entries, just in terms of and the reasons there were detailed in the auditors' report, of which because they weren't material, they're not required to be adjusted, so they haven't been adjusted. They will flow through into the next financial year and get picked up as part of that process. And in terms of any opportunities for improvement, for example, they also get picked up and taken forward into the new financial year. So no, they are unadjusted, non-material findings.
Thank you. It's been comforting today to have the time with the auditors to ask questions. So we have been able to discuss a lot of these things. I just wanted to ask one further question. On page 157, there are some business improvement opportunities and other guidance that were listed. What would be the process after this audit process has been completed for Council to look at those and consider whether they could be incorporated into the business of Council?
Sorry, and I meant to say through you, Mayor, for the last time. Thank you, Councillor Uri, for the question. When the officers go through that report with the auditors and discuss any findings that the auditors will have in those reports, as well as addressing any recommendations and provide management comment on a number of items. In terms of those improvement opportunities, it's a value add. We look at those in terms of what value or the priority we might place on those as well. But we certainly consider every one of those improvement opportunities, as we should. And whether they need to flow through to councillors, I guess that will be a decision that is then made in terms of, depending on what the matter is that they've suggested could be an improvement opportunity. But you may see that in a different report or whatever it might be.
Thank you. There were some other figures I was interested in called Sustainable Capacity Indicators on page 120. And interesting that the figures compare 2020 with 2021, 2022 and 2023. So some of those interesting ones to me were the expenses per head of municipal population. So that's increased from 2,250 to 2,417 per person. That's really how much the sum works out to per person in East Gippsland. That's an interesting figure. Probably not a question, but just a comment.
Take that as a comment, though, if you like, Councillor Uri.
And the population density per length of road, that's increased too, so we're growing.
Or the roads are getting shorter. I think we're growing.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillors, are there any further questions of our officers? Well, thank you for the report. Councillors, there is a recommendation there. Do we have a motion? Councillor Allen, you'd like to move it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Stowe, Councillor Allen. Now, in that
I need to
motion, you're going to populate point 4.
Yes, and I'd like to nominate the two councillors to sign off, being Councillor Uri and your good self.
I'm happy to do that. Are you happy to accept that, Councillor Uri?
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
And as the councillors on that Audit and Risk Committee, that seems appropriate.
Correct.
So happy for those names to be populated there. So just check the screen and make sure that that's exactly the motion that you are moving.
Yes.
Councillor Stowe, you're still happy to second that? Would you like to speak to the motion?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Look, first of all, Liz, thank you for all the work that's gone into this. It's extremely comprehensive, and the time that we had with the auditors today gave me comfort that you continue to do a fantastic job, and I have no hesitation in recommending that this report be received and adopted.
Thanks, Councillor Allen. Councillor Stowe, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only that I think we should be very proud of the work that's being done to get these results. It's excellent.
Councillors, the motion opposed. Would anybody else like to speak to or against the motion? In which case, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried unanimously, councillors. Thank you. Councillors, let's move on to item 5.1.2, which is the provision of library materials. So we're still in the business excellence sector.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mayor, and through you.
Thank you, Ms Collins.
Councillors, before you is a report seeking approval of the procurement recommendations for a panel of providers for the supply of library materials and awarding of the contract. Salient points from the report are there is a local government performance reporting framework measure to ensure that 40 to 90% of library collection has been purchased in the last 5 years. Council purchases about 7,000 items per year. This includes books, multimedia, large print items and e-resources. A contract for Council to purchase library materials is up for renewal. The contractor has undertaken a process to procure a panel for the provision of library materials for libraries across Victoria. This approach is beneficial as it leverages combined purchasing power. A panel of suppliers provides supplier choice to deliver a range of shelf-ready items for library materials, like those I mentioned earlier. The proposed contract is for an initial 3-year period, with options for a further 2 one-year extensions. The costs for this contract are within Council's approved budget. The officer recommendation is contained within the report on page 91 of your agenda, or the second page of this particular report. And here tonight with me is Luke Robinson, Acting Manager, Customer Experience and Communications, who is available to respond to any questions of a technical nature.
Thank you very much, Ms Helling. Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions of the report or of Mr Robinson in regard to the contents of that report? Yes, Councillor Greason. How did I get that wrong?
Thank you.
And then Councillor White.
Ms Elling, would you mind explaining the role of the MAV in this context?
Thanks for that question.
Contractor has actually been withheld from. It's in the confidential component of the report. It hasn't been mentioned in the open agenda.
Okay. I probably need to understand then what is confidential.
Sorry, Councillor Greason, I think that what is being mentioned is that the disclosure of that is part of the confidential section, that joint procurement arrangement.
Correct.
So
Yes.
I think that's what's
Okay. Okay, that's fine. We'll leave it till then. Thank you.
Yep. I mean, if you'd like to, we can actually go into confidential discussion if you'd like to, Councillor Creason. There's no problem with that.
No. We'll leave it. Thank you.
Good. Councillor White, you have a question, and just a reminder that those two confidential items do remain confidential, but we can move into camera to discuss them if you like, councillors. It's Councillor White and then Councillor Crook. I've got Councillor White there first. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. Luke, my question's around the who decides what types of books come to our libraries. Do our staff choose them, or does the supplier, given across the board, say to all the libraries that they supply across the state, do they make the decision on what the content of the books are?
Thanks, Councillor White. Good question. And
through you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for the question, Councillor White. Our staff have choice on the books that they source for our collection, that are suitable for our collection, and that's within line with the Australian Library and Information Association and the Australian Public Library Alliance standards and guidelines, and also our own collections management policy, so that they guide the books we get. We also don't censor the books we get. We get a wide variety of material, books and other materials for our libraries across the Shire.
All right, thank you. So just for a follow-up to that, so this is an approximate figure that we're talking about tonight. So do the staff then perhaps work to within a budget as they put their orders in for books, because obviously they all have a different price, so we'd have to remain within that a cost limit?
Through you,
yes,
Mayor.
go ahead,
Councillor White, the procurement details are in the confidential report, but yes, we work to the approved budget that Council has available to purchase the books. So items might vary between $10 and $100 depending on the item that we source from a supplier. And it's also, I think it's important to note that we also have some budget set aside outside of this contract for local purchasing or purchase of the hard to find nature. But it's within budgeted money.
Yep.
Good, thank you.
Councillor White.
Thanks, Luke.
Good on you. Thank you. Councillor. Thanks, John. Councillor Crook.
And without going into too much specific detail, as I understand the confidential nature of the tender process, this process itself is a collaborative tender process for the supply of materials, where we're looking to establish a tender panel of providers which we can then use to source materials at a library by library level. Am I understanding that right?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
My question, if I may, is regarding the joint borrowing arrangements with other libraries. Is that still in place, so that if there's a resident who specifies a particular book, we may not have to buy it. We may be able to borrow it from another library across the state. Is that still in place, Luke?
It is, Mayor. Yes. Interlibrary loans.
Interlibrary loans. That's fantastic. Great. So really, all the libraries are a big library.
Correct.
Fantastic. Councillors, any more questions? Okay, councillors, there is a recommendation and we need a motion. So, Councillor Crook, you'll be happy to move the motion, and that's probably what is at the confidential attachment. So, just we'll ask if that confidential item can be put up on the board, up on the screen, and then you can check that that's what you're moving. Then I'll ask for a seconder to make sure the seconder is actually moving. So you're happy to then populate that with the full recommendation, which is at the confidential attachment?
Yes, I am.
So we're happy to slide that up now, Vanessa, so Councillor Crook can see what he's moving. Just check that is what you understand, and then I'll ask you if there's a seconder for that.
Municipal Association.
That's as is presented in our confidential document, I think.
Yes, that is as presented in our confidential documentation.
Okay, do we have a seconder then? Councillor Greason, thank you. Great. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, sure. Look, libraries are obviously a cherished service that our council provides. Most of our major population centres have one. As we've just heard, they work as one big service where you can shuffle the books between them. If you don't live in Bairnsdale and you need a book from Bairnsdale, you can get it in Orbost or you can get it anywhere. We have over 77,000 items in our libraries, and we order about 7,000 new items a year. So this process will allow us to continue to procure new materials, not just books, audiovisual products and other elements of the library service into the future, so that people who use that service can enjoy them.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
I support the motion. I would still like an answer to my question, and now that it's public, I'm not quite sure what the process is going to be. So do we have the opportunity when we go into...
So unfortunately we're in debate now, so technically no, we can't ask the question, but I could grant that if there is an opportunity. This is about the joint procurement that's proposed. You could ask a question of clarification about that joint procurement with MAV. Is that what you'd like to ask?
No, not really. I think...
well, I'm giving you an opportunity to ask that and not much else. So.
I will ask that question. Thank you. Please, would you mind on...
Because we are in debate and technically.
Yes.
Sorry to be officious there.
No, it's appropriate. But I will discuss this some other time. Thank you.
For clarity, would you mind asking your question of clarification so I know what I can answer?
Around the joint procurement arrangements through MAV?
Thank you. What is the role of the MAV in this process? I mean, I understand the role of the MAV in this process, but would you please explain the advantages of it? And I know that, thank you, that'll do.
Of course. Thank you, Councillor Greason. Through you, Mayor. My understanding is the MAV perform the role of managing the contract in and of itself. So undertaking the procurement, creating the panel of suppliers, and then providing to its clients, in this case this council, the opportunity to enter into a contract with MAV for this council to then access directly the suppliers that are on that panel to garner the best value for money for the services or materials that we're after to furnish our libraries. You're welcome.
Still happy to second that now that you... Yeah, great. Good. Thanks, Councillor Greason. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? And the love of our libraries. Councillor Buckley, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. For some reason I just... Whoops. Sorry, I'll turn that off. I just got a little bit distracted then. So basically I just wanted to support this endeavour, however, with a caution. And that caution is just to do with the procurement of or ensuring that that the process is done with caution to ensure that any books that are purchased for children meet the requirements and the expectations of community when they're placed into our libraries. I'm not sure how that process is done, but I'm sure it's done very carefully. And I think that as councillors, our role is to ensure that we're making the right decisions for our community with the types of books available to our children. So I will support this motion. However, I do so cautiously in regards to that matter, and I think that we should ensure that we make sure the content of any books that are made available in our children's sections are appropriate, age appropriate, and also content appropriate. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillors, any further comments? In regard to that matter, I know some of the library staff. I have great faith in them, and absolutely have seen the children's section, the reading programs that they've run, and have every confidence. I think the risk of councillors being involved in choosing books is fraught, and we should leave it to the experts. We should have our noses in and our fingers out in these matters. Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Councillors, let's move on to item... Thanks, Luke. Assets and Environment, 5.2. And we have another contract, councillors, and just a reminder again that there is a confidential attachment, so just be mindful of questioning and any comments around that so that we don't trip on that particular matter, which is easy to do. So, Ms Weigel, this looks like your area.
It is, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you, as the Mayor has mentioned, is a contract for a project to upgrade Forest Park in Orbost. The project is funded through a $1.3 million federal government grant from their Regional Recovery Program, Partnership Program, and a further just over $500,000 of council funds from our capital budget. This contract will deliver the following works: a new toilet and amenities block, new parking, a new junior playground, a new picnic area, a new shelter. A plan of the proposed development is attached to the report. To ensure that the project met the allocated budget, Office engaged a quality surveyor to do a detailed costing review of the proposed project concept. And these reviews were completed and identified areas which required scope reductions to ensure that the project remained within the available budget. As a result of this review, Council determined that there was a need to further, or Council officers determined that there was a requirement to further refine the original design, and some elements were removed from this particular contract, and those elements were a DDA compliant path from the Arts Centre to the barbecue, shelter, a senior playground, and the shelters around the junior playground, timber boardwalks and a bridge, and water features to a creek bed. Future funding will most certainly be sought for these opportunities, and they are designed and would be ready to install subject to future funding. As it stands within the contract, the design will still provide a major upgrade to the park and will revitalise and modernise components of Orbost's premier passive recreation area and a must-do visitor rest stop. This will both grow local tourism and stimulate the local economy by providing a destination for travellers using the Princes Highway and improve a place for community members of all ages to gather. A project reference group comprising of community members was involved throughout the design process, and community engagement was also taken online using our Your Say page created back in 2021. And we also had a range of drop-in sessions that were held in June of 2021 and supported this online process. Significantly, the details of the playground area were co-designed with students from the Orbost Secondary College through a facilitated term-wide program which took the students through a learning journey as well as developing designs. Their brief was to design, plan, pitch and a proposal for the new Forest Park playground with the elements suitable for 1 to 15-year-olds. And this was an exciting initiative that was facilitated through the Broadening Horizons program. Council then hosted further information sessions to gather feedback on these proposals. The analytics we use on our Your Sage page tell us that over 1,200 people were aware of the project, and almost 500 were informed, and over 60 participated in the surveys. As the Mayor has indicated, the report is accompanied by a confidential attachment which outlines both the budget and the tender evaluation process, including the recommendations from the tender evaluation panel for awarding the contract. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Ms Weigel, thank you. Exciting times for Orbost. Councillors, yes, Councillor Stowe, you put a question, then Councillor White.
Yes, could I ask, this is aimed at the locals and also tourists, and it's a great idea to try and get tourists into Orbost. How are we going to promote this to the tourists to let them know it's there? And secondly, will there be any signage on the highway indicating it's there?
Thank you, Councillor. I was very prepared for questions about the project and the contract, but not so much about this. Perhaps I could take that on notice and we could get back to you with a response.
Terrific. Good question. Thank you. Councillor White, go ahead.
Still having mouse trouble, but I finally got back on.
You've got it. You're on off mute. Well done.
Yes, I'll get it some rat sack in a minute if it doesn't behave. So, yeah, my question relates to the fact that that area, although it's a very pretty area, it's also subject to inundation during natural disasters. And my question is around these new installations. Are they placed in positions where they would be protected? Because we wouldn't like to invest all that money and then see something happen in a natural disaster. So the question is, are they in an elevated position?
Good question, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor. Absolutely, this is one of the key requirements of the redesign project. As all of the councillors know, Forest Park has got a lot of the infrastructure which is right down in that flood zone, and it does flood. There's a lot of inundation that goes through that area fairly regularly. So the idea was, and the design pulls the playground and all the infrastructure up above the flood zone, and it is designed so that it's suitable to get wet, so it can withstand some minor inundation, but it will no longer be in that flood zone. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor
Well, thank you very much.
Appreciated, and we want those things to stay there and not go floating past my place in a rain event. Councillor Uri, then Councillor Crook.
Thank you. Great that the project reference group has been engaged in this project. It's terrific to have that form of consultation with the community. I wonder, though, about, given current circumstances, state government, federal government, what's the likelihood of finding some future funding to add those other elements to this project, please?
Look, we understand that the community is really keen to make sure that we can do that. So I've been talking with my colleague who's involved in some of those transition programs and those funding opportunities. And we're also can you believe it, we're also in the early stages of starting to prepare the budget for consideration and discussion with councillors for next year's. So it'll also be placed in that budget for consideration by council.
Oh, that's great. So some of those things could be staged over time.
That's right. And
thanks,
rather than just water down the entire design, we elected to take out complete elements so that we can fund them through other mechanisms over time.
Great, thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Crook, yes, you.
Just following on from what Councillor Uri has said and Ms Weigel, the development, as I understand it, is taking a staged approach. Would it be right to assume that the section we're looking to approve tonight will in fact be done in a way that's sympathetic to future developments? I'm just thinking of the road side of the exhibition centre there is, well, let's just say it's seen better days, and it's obviously something the community have identified as being in need of a bit of a facelift as well. So just making sure that the development we're approving tonight is sympathetic for that work to happen in the future. Thank you, Councillor, and again through you, Mayor. Yes, when we undertook the design, we designed for the complete project, so the contract was for a component of that. We also made sure that we were engaging with the stakeholders from throughout that precinct to make sure that there's really good critical linkages that are designed and can be implemented as we move forward and as budget is available. So it's looking at the precinct as a whole. Whilst the contract doesn't deliver that in its entirety, it is certainly designed so it can be staged over time.
Thank you. Ms Michael, I have a quick question then about the actual process of the construction. And I think there was some community concern about it not impeding some of the critical events that take place there over various times. And I presume that the successful tenderer will be very aware of that.
The successful tenderer, once they know they are the successful tenderer, will be very aware of that. We have some fairly tight timeframes around the funding, and that's the double-edged sword of having funding. Is fantastic, but it also comes with some fairly tight milestones. So we would look to make sure that there is no work started over that Christmas period, because we're really conscious of how important Forest Park is in those Christmas, New Year celebrations. So we would be starting in January, but would be starting in a manner that it didn't impede on use of some of those critical areas during the January period as well.
Great, thanks for that response, and it's really appreciated. Councillors, are there any further questions? Councillor, so once again, there is a recommendation, and in the confidential attachment, there is a tender evaluation report recommendation to populate item 2 in that recommendation. So is there someone who has a motion that they would like to move? Councillor Crook, thank you. And Councillor Crook, we will get that motion up on the board so that you can make sure that we're populating with what you actually want, and then I'll seek a seconder. So item 2 will be populated by the recommendation in the confidential report. Vanessa, are you happy to slide that up? And that's what you understand?
Yes, that accords with the motion I have here, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Councillors, do I have a seconder then? Councillor Uri, thank you. Councillor Crook, are you happy to speak to this motion?
I am, and it's to recommend that the council adopt this motion tonight. Forest Park is probably the main or a main highly significant area for Orbost. It's one of the first places many travellers stop when they pull into the town. Upgrading the visitor facilities and the amenity of this area will greatly improve the visitor experience for people visiting that town as well as locals. It's really pleasing to hear that the concerns of the Orbost Chamber of Commerce and other user groups that within that same precinct that encompasses the all the user groups that use the Forest Park area, the exhibition centre, the visitor information centre, it seems like their concerns are being addressed by this through taking a staged approach. And that this element of the development will be sympathetic to those future uses and the further development of the precinct in good time.
Councillor Crook, thank you. Councillor Uri, did you want to speak to the motion?
No, I support those comments from Councillor Crook. Councillor Crook. We know how important this area is for visitors to Orbost, but also for the local community as well. I would just like to congratulate all those people who've engaged with the process. So the people on the project reference group, but particularly the Orbost Secondary College, it was really pleasing to see their involvement in their own local community in helping to design this. So that's a fantastic aspect of the project. Thank you.
Councillor, is the motion opposed? Or would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Nobody else? Councillor Allen? This is such a well-loved place. I'm going to just say this, that Forest Park is green and lush and loved, and this is just going to be such a great improvement and asset. And there's been a lot of consultation. There's been a lot of input from a lot of people, and I think it's a real credit to the officers who've been able to synthesise all those different views and to actually end up with a design and an outcome that is going to be on budget. That's very important, and is going to represent all of those views as best they possibly can. I'm so excited, I can't wait to see the end product on this. Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Councillors, well done. Look out, Orbost, here it comes. Very exciting. Item 5.2.2, Ms Weigel, is another one of yours. So this is... No? What have I done? Oh, Councillor Buckley. We'll just see if we can find Councillor Buckley again. Just hold fire.
Yeah, she did get in touch with me just before and said she's feeling unwell, and she was thinking of leaving, but I would have assumed she would have relayed that information to Vanessa.
Okay, just a second. Hang on, I've got a message. Okay, thank you. So Councillor Buckley has just advised me that she can't attend any further. So we can move on. Ms Weigel, 5.2.2, Lake Tyers Beach Community Hall upgrade.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. Again, another contract for an important project for a local community. This project is again partially funded through a federal government grant of $400,000, this time from the Federal Black Summer program. And there's also a contribution of over $620,000 from Council's capital budget. The proposed renovations that represented by this contract will significantly upgrade the facilities, including improving IT and communication of facilities, along with a mixture of inviting indoor and outdoor meeting and activity spaces for this growing community. The contract will deliver a range of works that are outlined in the body of the report. As we know, Lake Tyers Beach Hall is a council asset and therefore part of our asset management strategy. This upgrade is not only important for the current local community, but will benefit future generations in a growing community. And therefore, that is why council has committed funds from the capital budget to the project. Engagement with the Lake Tyers community informed the development of the project design, and the community engagement included the establishment of a project reference group with members of the Lake Tyers beach community and a Your Sage online page which was created back in February of 2022 and contained the project details. The Lake Tyers Beach Community Hall Committee of Management have requested a stage construction with the proposed delivery of the project to occur between October and March to reduce the impact on the users of the facility as much as possible and is in a period that is identified as the quietest period for that community. And therefore, we will be proposing that the contractor commences in the beginning of October. The report is again accompanied by a confidential attachment outlining the budget and the tender evaluation process, including the recommendations of the tender evaluation panel for awarding the contract. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, and are there any questions of clarification around this exciting upgrade? Councillor Greason.
And this time I won't mention anything confidential. Fiona, the Toonalook Primary School is next door, and they've used the hall a lot, I think. Is that correct? What is this going to support their ongoing use of the hall, or...?
It will support ongoing use of the hall by the school community, but also by a number of other user groups. So the school community was represented on the project reference group. And so, as with the design of most of our buildings and our building upgrades, we're looking to make sure that we can maximise usage by as many user groups as possible, including the school.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors, are there any further questions? My question is really a comment, and I note, Mr McConnell, that we already have a stand system in there, one of my favourite natural disaster upgrades, and this is going to be another adjunct to that community to have that hall upgraded as a support centre, basically. Yes, that's fine.
Yes.
Great. Any further questions, councillors? So once again, councillors, there is a recommendation there, and I need a motion that hopefully reflects, Councillor Greason, the confidential tender evaluation. So again, we'll get the blank up on the screen. And Councillor Greason, if you're happy to just see that point 2 reflects what you've possibly seen in the confidential attachment, and that's what you're happy to move.
Yes, it's correct. And part 2 is to accept the tender submitted by Design Co. Builders Proprietary Limited for CON 2024 1518 Lake Tyres Beach Community Hall upgrade. Construction works for the contract amount of $908,200 exclusive of GST.
Terrific. Thank you, Councillor Greason. You've moved that, councillors. Is there a seconder? Oh, there's a rush. Councillor Crook, go ahead. You happy to second it?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, look, this is fantastic. It's a great hall. I've been to a number of events there over the years and really enjoy it. And I think that this will make a big difference to how it can be used for, as you say, for many, many groups. So I'm very pleased to see this and support it.
Councillor Greason, thank you. Councillor Crook.
Just to second what Councillor Greason said, it's a community asset in that area. It's used extensively. This will facilitate further use and for community benefit.
Fantastic. Councillors, the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Allen, please go ahead.
Just to say that very early in our term, I was invited out to the hall to sort of, I suppose, lay the groundwork for this project that we're approving tonight. But what really occurs to me out there is it's a great little community, but it always has been. And I can remember when that hall was first built, which makes me old, but, and there's a bit of a connection here with design builders, but the Whelans, the Kents, the Beverages, and Wadcoats and other long-term families out there used to run all manner of bush dances and all sorts of things to get it to a stage, you know, that the community wanted. So it's great to see that the work that they did way back then is being honoured and built on.
Terrific.
Line dancing after? Tigers, yes.
There would have been a lot of chook raffles to get that going, I dare say.
There was.
Thanks for those comments. Councillors, would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Thanks, councillors. In which case, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Terrific. We're very happy to see that moved along. That's carried unanimously. So, yeah, terrific. Councillors, we're on to another contract and we are 5.2.3, which is for construction of AJ Freeman Reserve netball tennis change rooms. Ms Weigel, keep on going.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. As you've just mentioned, Mayor, another important project for another of our communities. This project is partially funded by a $1 million grant from the state government's Female-Friendly Facilities program. There is a $16,000 contribution from the local committee of management and an additional just over $760,000 of support from council. The project was identified as a high priority in the consultation around the draft East Gippsland Sporting Facilities Plan that included an extensive consultation with the Committee of Management. Construction of the change rooms at this facility is seen as an important investment and is anticipated to strongly support the increase in female participation by creating change room facilities that are female friendly and fit for purpose. At present, there are no such facilities at this location. The contract will deliver works which will include demolition of one of the existing tennis courts, including the associated fences. There will be 3 tennis courts remaining. The construction of the new netball tennis pavilion, installation of water tanks and all services to, as shown on the drawings, shown as an attachment, and construction of disabled parking and pathways linking the car park, the netball courts and the tennis courts. As we've mentioned, there's been a range of engagement with the Paynesville community to develop this project, including the use of a project reference group that has helped design with the design work. We've used online engagement via Your Say, and there's been a range of updates on the project via social media. This report is accompanied again by a confidential attachment outlining the budget and the tender evaluation panel process, including the recommendations of the tender evaluation panel for awarding the contract. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Terrific. And if there are any questions, we're happy to receive them now. Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms Weigel. Just a couple of questions. One about the solar panels. I think I've mentioned these before. Now, I know these are change rooms, so it's not a kitchen facility. So I think there was some question about whether we would install the solar panels sort of as of right, because we might need the power in this building. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councillor Uri, through you, Mayor. At this stage, they're not included in this contract. But we'll continue to work towards funding those, and so therefore we've future-proofed the design to allow space for both the solar panels and batteries for the service, so it can be installed at a later date. And the conduits to the pump and the tank will be installed to allow for future connection. So whilst it's not part of this contract, we see that depending on power use and how much power the facility uses, there's the ability to install at a later date.
Wonderful. And if I could ask just one more question,
Absolutely.
Mr Mayor, thank you. The old club room, which I think is shown on the map, up on the hill there, I think that wasn't going to be included for demolition immediately anyway. Is that correct?
That's correct. At this point in time, they will remain untouched by the scope of this project. But on completion of the project, we'd really encourage the tennis club to relocate and start using this facility. And there's been a lot of engagement with them around the facility as part of the design. We believe once they see it, they'll be very excited about what it presents for their community. And therefore, it's one of those principles that we use when we're designing right across the board is co-location of multiple user groups in the single facility. We would also then look at where there was opportunity to bring another user into that little club room, or whether it's demolished at a later date, but it's not planned for demolition at this stage.
Terrific. Thanks, Ms Weigel. Thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Uri. Councillors, any further questions? Comprehensive report, obviously. So well done, councillors. There is a recommendation, and once again, within the confidential attachment, there would be an opportunity for you to review that and a mover to suggest what is populated at point 2 there. So, do I have a motion? Councillor Uri, thank you. Councillor Uri, are you happy to have populated what is in the confidential attachment? Which is what is there on the screen now.
Yes. Yes, I'm happy to move that motion.
You turned it off.
Oh, you've just popped off. There we are. That's right. We're all experts when we're not using the microphones. That's the problem.
So I'm happy to move that motion, Mayor. So to accept the tender submitted by Brooker Builders for contract 2024-1614R, construction of AJ Freeman Reserve Netball Tennis Change Rooms for the contract amount of 1.599111.22 exclusive of GST.
The 22 cents is important.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillors, do we have a seconder? Councillor Van Diggle. Councillor Uri, would you like to speak to the motion? And a seconder, would you like to in a second, Councillor Van Diggle?
Like these other wonderful contracts this evening, this is another fantastic project.
Amazing.
To be used by many people to encourage increased female participation in sport is obviously a wonderful thing. So very happy to recommend this motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Councillor Van Diggle.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have much to add. I just thought, being a Paynesville resident, I got excited about this, so I thought I should second it.
Absolutely. Councillors, the motion opposed? Or would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Stowe.
For the motion, obviously, but just an observation that I've lived here for 45 years and I've never seen in our time the amount of infrastructure that's been built here. And this is good stuff. We're getting parks tonight, parks, sporting facilities, halls, and this is not just in Paynesville, this is throughout the whole Shire, and I think it's wonderful what we're getting. And that these facilities will be used for generations to come, I believe.
Well said, Councillor Stowe. And my rough maths show that we're moving nearly $3 million worth of contracts into our community tonight. Councillors, would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In which case, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That motion is carried unanimously. Item 5.2.4 is where we're going now. And Councillor White, we're happy for you just to slip away, and we'll contact you when this matter is concluded.
Okay, so that will come as a text message, possibly, on the phone?
Yes, oh look, yeah, Vanessa's going to dial you back in apparently, so give you a call. So stay there with Teams turned on. Yep.
Okay, I'll do that, right.
Good on you. See you in a moment. Ms Weigel, a contract extension.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, purpose of this report is slightly different to the ones that we've just considered, as it's seeking council approval to exercise its options within an existing contract to extend that contract for the first extension term of 12 months to the 30th of June 2024. This is a schedule of rates contract for the management of council-controlled land to prevent fire risk and weed growth, and is a key component of council's land manager responsibilities. Given the expanse of council's road network, which as we know is almost 3,000 kilometres, and the public reserves and the need for intense seasonal responses to growth, it's not possible to undertake this work in-house, whilst also ensuring the continuation of our normal parks and gardens management duties. Therefore, this service has traditionally been delivered by a panel of contractors appointed for multiple years on a schedule of rates basis. The contract is broken into 4 geographic areas, allowing contractors the choice of submitting prices for either one or more area. This also allows contractors to submit differing prices for the 4 areas, recognising the impact of travel and other factors on their pricing. Based on the schedule of rates approach, officers managing the service will have the ability to choose the most appropriate contractor for the location and works required based on availability, location of works and the quotes provided. Unlike the other contracts you've just considered, because this is an extension of an existing contract, there is no confidential attachment with this one. But I'm happy to report that with me this evening I do have a technical advisor, Paul Rooney, Manager of Civil Infrastructure, is also here and can take any technical questions.
Great, thank you, Ms Weigel. Good evening, Mr Rooney. Thanks for being here. Councillors, do you have any questions of our officers around this matter, this contract extension? Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mayor. As with any contract extension, I think my standard question is always how have we monitored the performance of the contract, of the prior contract, and how can councillors be assured that we should extend the contract?
I'm happy to pass this one over to Mr Rooney.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for a question and through the Chair. So during the life of the contract, all of our contractors who perform any sort of slashing work are required to document the work they do, provide square metrages back to us, and we'll keep a record of that through the year, and we'll measure that against road supervisors will measure what they've said against the work that was done, and to assure that we're getting the work done that they're actually issuing to them.
Terrific. Just as a follow-up, we often get, well, not necessarily complaints, but comments, I guess, from our communities about how our services are delivered in the community. I'm sure that you'd probably get a few comments from people about the slashing, and that is recorded, I guess, and would be assessed as part of the assessment at the end of the contract?
Definitely. Sorry, thanks, Councillor, for the question again, and through the Chair. So, yeah, look, we we get complaints, as you do with anything, but we'll assess any complaint that comes through to us on a case-by-case basis. If we determine as part of the slashing that we think we need to do more, we'll always try to accommodate residents where we can and, try and keep as many people happy as we can.
Yes, good.
Yep.
Thanks very much, Mr. Rooney.
Questions. Thank you for that. Yes, Councillor Crook.
Thank you. This program, is it primarily funded through the state government? Is that bucket of money that we're spending here, or is this actually our money as well, so to speak?
I'm happy to take this one. This is council cash. We get a very small state grant of about $70,000, which goes some way towards our weed management program. Our weed management program is over $1 million as well in its own right. So this is council funded. This is funded through ratepayer funds, and it's an extensive budget that we dedicate to this, recognising the importance of the service. The service is here for protection. It's not here for amenity, so we don't slash for amenity. We slash for roadside safety, so that's fire safety, that's visual safety, and that's to make sure that we haven't got noxious weeds on our roadsides and other areas. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification and question. Councillor, is there any further questions? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
Just seeking an assurance that we have appropriate hygiene protocols in place with our contractors to make sure we're not spreading weeds like African lovegrass from one area to another?
I'm sure Mr. Rooney would like to answer this one.
Yes, so look, we have been developing procedures for specific weeds, fireweed, other noxious weeds, and there is a process that we go through with our contractors who perform this work to ensure that they are aware of washdown procedures, all those kind of procedures that are part of this slashing process.
Very good. Thanks. That's reassuring. Thanks for the question, Councillor Crook. Councillors, are there any further questions? Councillors, in which case there is a recommendation. Do I have a motion? Councillor Crook, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Greason. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure. Look, just to say this is obviously another important service that Council delivers on behalf of the community to ensure road safety and fire mitigation measures are conducted appropriately, primarily around our roads, but I also understand in some of our natural estate reserves. It's obviously quite a significant sum of money. Ms Mergel indicated over $1 million. It's unfortunate the state government only contributes $70 million to this.
70,000, correction, 70 million would take.
$70,000. I would submit that quantum could be 10 times more, and we would gladly spend it and could easily spend it. But this is important work right across our region. These are obviously trusted and experienced providers, and I have no hesitation in recommending the motion to the council.
Very good. Good comments. Thank you for that. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks. It's very hard to add to what Councillor Crook has said, and
Indeed.
I agree with what he said. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, the motion opposed? Anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? I see no one. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That's carried unanimously. Thanks, Mr Rooney. Thanks for your contribution. Good evening. And we'll just wait for Councillor White, who's just about to join us. And Ms Weigel, thank you for your extensive reports there. And we're now moving on to Place and Community. Mr McConnell, sounds like your patch.
Thank you, Mayor.
And the first item is the revised draft planning scheme amendment policy.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report regarding the revised draft planning scheme amendment policy. The officer's recommendation is that the revised draft policy is adopted. Some of the things for your consideration: the policy sets out the framework for how we consider and assess privately initiated planning scheme amendments, including the processes and the costs associated with such amendments. Private planning scheme amendments, or a private planning scheme amendment, is generally one that delivers a benefit to only one or a small number of landholders, with limited broader community benefit. And And in general, these planning scheme amendments are not part of the broader strategic planning program that Council delivers. It generally will involve just a single parcel of land and is aimed at facilitating a development that's not contemplated within the existing zoning for that land. Such amendments are costly to prepare, and the policy is based on the principle that the beneficiary of the amendment should be bearing the costs of that amendment, and that is set out in the policy. The policy sets out the processes for considering private planning scheme amendments, the information that's required to provide the strategic justification, and so on. The draft policy contains some minor revisions over our existing policy. So really this is an update of what we already have in place, something that's been in place since 2013 and was reviewed in 2018. So it's just, in that sense, it's a continuation with some minor updates. And the draft policy is very similar to those adopted by other councils across Victoria. So the recommendation, councillors, for you that you adopt the draft policy, and online this evening to assist with any further questions of detail is Martin Richardson, our Manager Planning.
Mr McConnell, thank you. Councillors, planning never ceases to amaze me in the complexities that it throws up. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification of our officers? Councillor Greason, go ahead, please.
Thank you. 2 questions. First one being how often are private planning scheme amendments put up for consideration, and could you give a couple of examples of these?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you. I'll defer to Mr Richardson for another example in a moment. So they do come through occasionally every few years. Probably the most recent one that had a component but was not one that council prepared because it was dealt with by the state was the Kmart proposal. Involved a component of amendment of the planning scheme to enable the Kmart development in Bairnsdale. But there are others that do occur from time to time, and Mr Richardson might want to add if there's any other examples that come to mind.
Thank you, Stuart, and through you, Mayor.
Yeah.
I'd have to say it's quite rare for a private planning scheme amendment to come up. 10, 15 years ago, most planning scheme amendments were run by council and paid for by council, but that was before the days of significant costs in preparing them. There have been a couple in the last 10 years where a landowner has sought to rezone a single property in order to create a development opportunity, and in both those cases they carried the cost of the amendment, but it was, I'd say, not a great cost. These days, flora and fauna surveys, traffic surveys, strategic justification costs a lot of money to prepare. So it is quite rare for an applicant to seek a private planning scheme amendment. But in any case, council needs to have a process in place to deal with that, because any person could apply to the council to rezone their land, and therefore the policy puts in place a process whereby the beneficiary of the uplift in value pays the cost of preparing the amendment. But I'd say only 2 or 3 in the last 10 years.
Interesting.
Thank you, that's very helpful info.
That's great. Gives me a bit of reassurance about why this is in front of us too. Councillor, are there any further questions of our officers? Yeah, Councillor Crook. And then you, Councillor White. Councillor Crook, go ahead.
Yes, and just entertain my musings for a second, if you don't mind. So council is responsible for strategic planning. That's the setting of priorities and initiatives for land to be rezoned for certain purposes based on our understanding of the demand for those things. You know, Bairnsdale needs a new industrial estate. Council rezones some land to create an opportunity to create a new industrial estate and so forth. It seems a little bit strange that there is a capacity within the planning scheme for a private entity to almost circumvent those strategic planning processes of council in the first instance. And I just wonder, would it normally be the case that a private planning scheme amendment is actually operating outside of council's more broader strategic planning framework?
Thank you, Councillor
Richardson. What do you
Cook. Through
think?
you, Mayor. That's an extremely good question. So the purpose of this policy is to actually prevent the circumvention of council's strategic planning processes. Currently, we have planning scheme amendments proposed for the next year or two relating to the rural land use strategy, the housing and settlement strategy, the delivery of 2,000 to 3,000 homes in Paynesville, Bairnsdale, Lakes Entrance, etc. They are the strategic priorities of council. If citizen Smith comes along and says, I want my land rezoned, then the policy says it's not a strategic priority for us. And the state planning system says you must demonstrate how this is strategically important. So it actually doesn't circumvent the system. It creates a process whereby that person, that proponent, must demonstrate the community value in that rezoning and must also pay the costs so that the ratepayers don't pay the costs. So the policy actually says we've got our strategic priorities for delivering housing, delivering commercial development, etc., protecting the environment through our planning scheme. If someone comes in out of left field and says, I want my land rezoned, then we say, this is the process you must go through. And by the way, you've got to provide the strategic justification and you have to pay for it yourself.
Thank you.
Councillor Crook, thank you. Councillor White.
Thank you. Martin, my question's perhaps not going to be correct, but for argument's sake, we have the new rural land use strategy, and but also at the moment we're seeing the possibilities of solar farms and wind farms. Does anything like that on the rural land trigger an amendment, or can it just happen?
Thanks, Councillor White, and through you, Mayor. No, the current state planning policy arrangements and planning scheme arrangements for things like solar farms, etc., operate within the existing zoning. So, as you've mentioned, and that's been discussed in your earlier report to council, solar farm proposals will be dealt with by the government and council through existing zoning. So none of those rely on the rezoning of land. This policy primarily deals with people who wish to have their land rezoned so that they can get an uplift in the value of that land. But for 99% of the planning issues that we deal with at council at the moment, they don't require rezoning. They just require us to go through the process of assessing planning applications.
Thank you.
Councillor White, thank you for the question. Councillors, are there any further questions around this revised planning scheme amendment policy? Thank you, councillors, in which case there is a recommendation. Do we have a motion? Councillor Allen, you're happy to move it. Councillor Crook to second it. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to say that... Oops.
To say that the microphone's on.
Sorry. I'll start again. Look, it's, as Martin has said, this may not even get dragged out before the next revision, but it's absolutely vital that we have that strategy there in case. So I think on the basis of that, I think it's something that we should support, and I recommend to councillors that they do.
Councillor Allen, thank you. Councillor Crook.
Just to confirm what Councillor Allen said and reinforce the need for clarity for both council and prospective developers around the process, so we can all be guided by that with this policy being adopted.
Thank you, councillors. Councillors, the motion opposed? Or would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Thank you, councillors. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That is carried unanimously. Mr McConnell, thank you. Mr Richardson, we'll move on to the next item, which is an interesting item. Thank you, Mr McConnell. Draft position paper extractive industries.
Thank you, councillors, and through you, Mayor. Before you is a report setting out presenting for your consideration a draft position paper in relation to extractive industries. Councillors, you requested that officers prepare a draft position paper for your consideration, and really it was an opportunity for councillors to consider what's important to council in any future extractive industry proposal before that proposal comes before council. So we're clear up front for both for council, for community, for proponents, for officers in engaging with proponents about what's important to council about any future extractive industry proposal. So in that sense, it's important to have that clarity, and it informs all of those stakeholders I just outlined. As we've prepared this draft position paper for your consideration, I note there's some key themes in that in the position paper in terms of ensuring that the impacts or the risks associated with any extractive industry proposal are properly managed, both the environmental risks, public health risks and similar, that the impacts on local communities are considered, but most importantly, that there is actually a benefit locally to any extractive industry proposal that comes forward. And that presents a key theme there. The position paper also reiterates Council's position that's been well stated for some time about the need for reform in some of the approval processes related to extractive industries. So with that, councillors, you have a recommendation in front of you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. Thank you for putting it in front of us. Councillors, are there any questions, comments, thoughts, observations? Councillor White, go ahead, and then Councillor Greason.
Thank you. Stuart, the other at the bottom of the document or in the document is about the EES process. Do you think that we would gain any traction with the government in our ask that be sort of looked at to take the costs away from council?
Thank you, Councillor White, and through you, Mayor. Council's been reasonably consistent in its advocacy around this particular issue. To date, we haven't seen particular traction on this issue with the Victorian Government, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to put that forward as an important issue, both on behalf of council, but importantly on behalf of our community as well.
Good question, John. Thanks.
Okay.
Councillor Greason, you had a question?
Thank you. This is, I think, very timely. I understand that there's a new interest in mineral sands to the south of the highway now, around Bangwater and that whole arc. I'm just wondering if you have further information about that and whether you think that this paper would cover the issues that may arise with further exploration and should there be a decision to start mining in that kind of area.
Thank you, Councillor Greason, and through you, Mayor. So yes, in recent months there has been an application for exploration licence advertised in an area south of the Princes Highway. That is an early first step in the whole process. So at this stage, it's unclear whether that would actually eventuate into a proposal to actually undertake an extractive industry development. But certainly if that was the case, then the position paper forms a basis for both the proponent in that case to be very aware of what council's views are, but also then, as I said, to inform officers in our discussions with any proponent that comes forward at that time. But in terms of the stages that an extractive industry development goes through, that is one that's at the very early stages.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Good. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Van Diggle, thank you. Thanks, councillors.
Thank you. I potentially have two questions, Stuart, but CalBar, for example, went straight to the state and we chose to act on the EES process. So where does this position paper stand? Should it just bypass council? Is it sort of our wish list for potential proponents, or is it, does it actually have any legal binding sort of requirements from potential proponents in the future?
Thanks, Councillor Van Dingelen, through you, Mayor. So the position paper doesn't in and of itself have a legal standing, but it is a clear statement about what's important to this council. Any significant extractive industry proposal is likely to require an environmental effects statement, and so the primary approvals for a major extractive industry development would always be at the state level. Depending on the specific proposal, there may also be some approvals required from council, either for the works or, as is often the case, various pieces of work around the main proposal. So there may in fact be some elements down the track. But I think, again, it's useful and puts council in a stronger position to have a public statement about what's important to it in relation to extractive industry proposals in the early stages of discussions with proponents.
Right. So I guess just to clarify to anyone watching as well, it's not exactly that council saying not in our backyard, we're against extractive industries. We just have certain expectations, what we expect from proponents.
Correct. Thank you. Yep.
Councillor Van Dingel, thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Crook.
Oh, just some clarity. I thought that we had discussed the need to ask the state to require mining proponents to pay council rates, which I understand they're currently exempt from, but I can't seem to find it in the document. Is that reflected in this current position paper?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Crook. How did we go, Mr McConnell? Did we?
Thank you, Councillor Crook, and through you, Mayor. I don't believe that specific item is included within the paper as it stands at the moment. What it does talk about is that activity should be of minimal cost to council, and it does also talk about the importance of reinvestment of royalties and the like, but it doesn't specifically go to the question of advocacy that proponents, extractive industry proposals pay rates.
Okay, thank you.
Interesting. Are there any further questions, councillors? Yes.
I just have one more, thanks, in regards to that, because it baffles me, actually, that mining industries don't have to pay rates. And I know it's not part of this, but I would be interested if the councillor group is to actually advocate for that. I know Horsham did it, I think in 2016, when they were looking at the Local Government Act and trying to advocate for it then. But I see it being part of this. It's obviously too late now, but I'd like to see that we might use this position paper to actually start advocating for rates and, like you said, royalties being distributed to East Gippsland, because I see very little financial benefit really coming to our region. So it's more of maybe a statement, but can that be included as part of it, or can we have it as our ask on our advocacy strategy?
Sorry, is that a request for amendment?
So thank you, Councillor Van Dingel. I think in that respect, officers are in your hands as to how councillors as a group would want to pursue that, either through subsequent advocacy work or as some sort of amendment to what's in front of you. So I think we're in your hands in that respect.
Okay, sorry, I was just distracted having a conversation with the CEO at that point around the difference, Mr McConnell, between extractive processes and processing processes such as gas plants that we have.
Yep.
And they do pay rates.
Correct.
Yep. So there's a very subtle difference. So,
yep.
But thank you. Councillor Greeson?
I was just going to make comment with respect to Councillor Van Digel's request for further work on this paper, and I think that there's quite a lot that we as council could be doing to advocate that state government fund or provide a reasonable share of royalties, as well as consider things like requiring mining companies, extractive industries to pay rates. So there is probably further work that could be done in the future, but I would prefer that be in the future. I'd like to see this paper come through.
Councillor Greason, thank you. We'll take that as a statement. Councillor White, question, clarification?
A question, pretty much supporting Kirsten on the rates issue. Would the councillors agree that perhaps we should amend this tonight or have it brought back with some additional requests in there? Perhaps the document's a little bit light at the moment.
So, Councillor White, I don't think that you can actually ask that question. You can put up an amendment when we get to that point. We can actually move it or not tonight, depending on what you want to do, with or without an amendment. However, that would be my take on this at the moment. So this is a discussion and seeking clarification from officers rather than a point of debate.
Mayor, could I just, perhaps I'm wrong here, but didn't we try and pursue this through the MAV? And I think that's an appropriate place to lobby state government.
Stand by, Councillor Stowe. We'll just get a reminder. Did we put up a motion around this?
I'll take that one on notice. I'd need to look that up through you, Mayor, but my suggestion is that this probably sits more in the advocacy space and perhaps through MAV and other mechanisms through our advocacy strategy, as opposed to perhaps a position paper which sets out the parameters more particularly for extractive industries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm happy with that, Mayor. I know we're not in debate or anything, but I do think this position paper could support the advocacy we work on that, the advocacy work we do on that down the track. But I do think it's important we try to get that done soon.
Councillor Van Diegel, thank you. Councillors, are there any further questions about this and what we have in front of us is this position paper, a draft position paper, and that might lead to further work in future, councillors, as has been suggested by you all, or many of you. Councillors, in that case, yes, Councillor Greason.
I wish to put the motion.
Okay, you wish to put the motion, so I was just about to ask. Excuse me, let me go. So there is a recommendation and I was asking for a motion. Councillor Greason, you're happy to put the motion. Thank you. Councillors, is there a seconder? Councillor Crook. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you very much. Look, I really welcome this position paper. I think it will provide guidance to Council for how to work with the interests in what's in the ground throughout this Shire. It spells out specifically that Council will advocate on behalf of the community when considering extractive industry projects. And it's clear that Council expects that project proponents will deliver net local benefit, jobs, training, investment, procurement, lasting infrastructure and contribution to community projects. And also, Council expects project proponents to address concerns about possible impacts on environment, housing, social issues, transport, workforce and roads, etc., and to adhere to Council policies on environmental sustainability, flora, fauna, water, air, the health and well-being of the community and economic development, and also that the projects are properly rehabilitated and do not disadvantage local communities. It spells out issues faced by communities and the Council because of mining industries and state government's lack of support for local government in this space, whilst acknowledging the importance of extractive industries. And it's an important advocacy document that I hope and expect extractive industry proponents to respect and pay close attention to. Thank you.
Councillor Greason. Councillor Crook.
Just to second and support what Councillor Greason has said, and to add that I think this is, as we've heard, our first iteration of the document 1.0, and there may well be further iterations down the track. We've heard tonight that potential other inclusions could be proponents paying rates on mining leases. I'd also suggest that the Earth Resources Regulator, through the Mining Rehabilitation Bonds Scheme, needs significant reform. So there are certainly various further additions that Council will consider. But as it stands, I think it's a good paper. It articulates Council's position well, in that we're not opposed to mining, we're not opposed to extractive industries, but we accept that if those proposals are going to occur in our communities, there needs to be community benefit, and they need to occur in a way that doesn't damage the environment for current or future generations.
Councillor Crook, thank you. Councillors, the motion opposed? Or would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Uri.
Thank you. Just briefly, Mayor, and I speak in support of the motion, to really just acknowledge the work that this council has already done in advocating for improvements to processes which don't disadvantage the local council in the EES process. So I really acknowledge that and thank our officers for all their work in that area. And I think this position paper will be a valuable tool in our further advocacy, which I hope is eventually successful.
Councillor Uri, thank you. Councillors, would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Thank you, councillors, in which case I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And even a thumbs up from Councillor White, thank you. Looks like it's carried unanimously. Councillors, thank you. Councillors, item 6 is urgent business, and I don't believe there is any, in which case we're going to move into confidential business, and I need a motion to move into confidential business pursuant to section 66(2) of the Local Government Act to consider the following items: 7.1, 7.2 and 7.3. Moved Councillor Stowe, seconded Councillor Allen. Do you want to speak to the motion? Councillor Allen, is the motion opposed, councillors? It isn't. I'll put the motion to the vote that we move into confidential, into camera. Thank you. We will close the meeting, so those who are watching We're back in public now, so just waiting. Do we need the CEO in attendance?
You might think we said you.
Just looking for them.
Pardon me? Here they come. So we'll just wait for the complement of officers so that we can close the meeting. So thank you to those who have been with us for the evening and patiently waited while we considered those confidential officer reports, 7.1, 7.2 and 7.3. They have been dealt with and they are confidential and remain confidential. But I will declare the meeting closed at 8:35. And once again, and as always, just to acknowledge the work of the officers in providing coherent, clear reports and briefings to councillors so councillors can make the best informed decisions that they possibly can. So thank you, councillors, for making those decisions. On that note, I will declare the meeting closed and wish you all a good evening.